Councillor Kathy Pearce. I'm chair of the committee. I'll first go through a few housekeeping rules. We're not expecting a fire drill this afternoon, so if the alarm goes, it's a real thing. Please make your way out of those double doors there, through reception and then to King Square, where we will assemble. There are toilets in reception should anyone need them, and there is water on the table over there. Please help yourself if you'd like to. So this meeting is a hybrid meeting, and that means that the committee members are present in Bridgewater House, and the meeting is also available online via Teams. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. Can I remind all those in the room to turn your mobile phones off or to silent, and can I remind those joining us online, please turn off your cameras and microphones so that the meeting is not disturbed. I'll now introduce those taking part in the committee today. To my left are the officers from our legal and democratic teams, and to my right are the planning officers who will present the applications. And on the wings of the table are the councillors who will debate and decide the applications. The format will be as per the published agenda, and a copy of the officer reports can be found on the council website. Each application will be taken in turn. Officers will outline each application, followed by public speaking time. Only members of the public who have registered to speak can make representation. Councillors around the table will then debate and decide on each application. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will vote on the proposal. Only members who have been present throughout the application will be able to vote. And the voting options are for, against, abstain or defer. Votes will be counted and the result announced. Before we go into the meeting, I've got a sad announcement. Many members around the table will already be aware, but sad to announce that Carl Brinkman from Highways, who very often attended this committee when there were particular highways issues to be considered, passed away a few weeks ago. So sorry, I thought people were aware. Yeah, so obviously, as you can tell, he worked closely with officers, and some of the members here would have had an association with him for a number of years. So I'd ask that we all stand and for a minute silence to pay respect to him, please. Okay. Thank you very much. So we will proceed with the agenda for the meeting.
Madam Chairman, we've got a couple of new faces, 3 new faces on the top table. Can we just,
yes,
so I'm sorry,
of
can I
course.
just let you know, you know what
Yeah.
I'm nosy.
Quite right, Councillor Bradford. Sorry, I should have done that. Would officers like to introduce themselves? If we go from Louise on my right and then work our way across. Thank you.
Hello there, I'm Louise Newcombe. I'm the new Principal Planning Officer for the North East team.
Hi, I'm Sarah Tucker. I'm the Principal Planning Officer for the North West team, but I'll be moving south next week.
Right, it's not too cold. Good afternoon, my name's Gary Collins. I'm the interim area manager for the North West area.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Paula Goddard, one of the council's lawyers, so I generally advise the Area South Planning Committee, but I'm here today to help you out.
I'm Debbie Widows and I'm going to be the new Officer in Democratic Services for Planning North.
I'm Layla Nicholson and this is my last planning committee.
Yeah. Thank you. And for all the new officers, councillors very usefully have name tags in front of us, so that So hopefully will help you all as well. But welcome you new officers to the committee. Right, we will now go into the agenda and apologies for absence. Debbie, would you like to give us the apologies, please?
We have apologies from councillor Jill Slocum and councillor Lance Dugridge is going to substitute for her today.
Thank you, and otherwise it's a full house. Minutes from the previous meetings held on 14th of May, 11th of June and 9th of July. I will take them as a whole unless there is any problems, but for accuracy, are they agreed as a correct record? Thank you. Do we need a proposer and seconder for all those, or all agreed? Okay, proposed by Matt. Can we have a seconder, please? Councillor Grimes, all in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. I will sign the minutes at the end of the meeting. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to make? Thank you. Councillor Hendry. Oh, yeah. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. On pages 93 and 109, it's in my division, but
The filmer. Councillor Ham, and then Councillor Bruce, and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you. With reference to planning application number 7 on the agenda, pages 85 to 92, I have commented online on this application, which is in my division, but I'm not predetermined and I'm willing to listen to all sides of the argument and debate at this meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Parrot Drainage Board, I think it's items 6 and 10, but I haven't taken part in any discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Thank you. Can I ask Paula, our legal officer, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Goodrich. Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Parrot Drainage Board as well, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask Paula, our legal officer, for the benefit of the public who are here today and online, to just go through why the declarations are made?
Yeah. So just to give you some information about the declarations of interest. So section 29 of the Localism Act 2011 requires the council's monitoring officer to maintain a register of interest of members of the authority. Councillors need to register any interest so that the public, local authority employees and fellow councillors know which interests might give rise to a conflict of interest. The register is a public document which can be consulted when or before an issue arises, and councillors are personally responsible in deciding whether they should declare an interest in an item at a meeting. So an interest may occur in varying circumstances if the member is twin or dual hatted, so they are also a parish or town councillor. They may previously be involved in a consultation process, and you've also heard some councillors say that they're on the Parrot Drainage Board, so other boards like that could have some consultation process involved in them. But so they may already have some knowledge or involvement of a particular application, but if a member of the committee has not taken part in previous discussions, or maybe has taken part but can come to the committee with an open mind and has not predetermined that matter, they can take part in the discussion, debate and vote. If, however, they have declared an interest and or are predetermined, they may only speak on the application at the appropriate time and then leave the room and cannot vote. So I hope that makes it clear for those people attending.
Thank you, Paula. We now go on to item 4 on the agenda, public question time. There are a number of speakers who've registered to speak, and I will call you forward, or I think one is online and one will have their statement read out on their behalf. I'll call you forward when we are considering the application. So that takes us on to the main part of the agenda, which is item 5, and this is to consider to agree the habitat regulations assessment for the planning application regarding land at Paulet Road, Pollet, Bridgewater. Officers, would you like to take us briefly through the HRA?
So this is a shadow habitat assessment report prepared by Clarkson Woods Ecological Consultants for this application, erection of new convenience store and 6 smaller commercial units with associated access, parking and landscaping. Oh, bit fast for me. That's the whole site. The reason we've got an HRA, shadow HRAs, is there's a European site that is potentially affected by the proposal, which is the Exmoor on Quantox Oakwood Special Area of Conservation, SAC for short. And the issue is regarding bat commuting and particular types of bats that are covered by the European designation. The Habitat Regs assessment proposes mitigation measures, including retention and buffering of commuting features such as hedges, provision of net gain and replacement of bat habitat, and designed to control external light spillage. And as a result, the favourable conservation status of the qualifying species, which in this case is Barbastelle and Bechstein's bats, is likely to be avoided. And the HRA has been accepted by the Council's ecologist and Natural England, and therefore officers are recommending approval of the shadow HRA in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Do you have any questions, comments, proposal? Councillor Grimes.
Yes, I would propose that, Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And seconded by Councillor Bradford. All those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you. So that takes us straight on to the next item relating to that, which is agenda item 6 on page 63, the application for land at Bristol Road, Pollet. Sarah, would you like to take us through, please?
Thank you, Chair. As I said before, the application is for the erection of a new convenience store, 6 smaller commercial units with associated access, parking and landscaping. The site is opposite the village. So this is the village. And this is 2 fields next to the Elms garage, which is a car sales garage. And that's the site area. The site basically consists of a field adjacent to the A38 to the east of the village of Paulet. To the west lies the car sales garage at the Elms, and to the north and east can be seen existing agricultural fields. Just to clarify the description for the proposal, in terms of use classes, the convenience store is proposed use class E, and the 6 commercial units are proposed use class E, which is the flexible use class, B2, which is general industrial, and B8, which is storage and distribution. So they're looking at a flexible use. So if I go down to the layout of the actual development itself, built development is proposed on the southern part of the site, with the northern part retained for landscaping, ecological mitigation, and drainage attenuation. The existing hedgerows are retained, apart from the access, and the landscaping the landscape that is proposed includes substantive tree planting and the creation of species-rich hedgerows. The units themselves, I'll show you the design. This is the co-op. The units themselves propose a mixture of horizontal dark coloured timber cladding and brick masonry walls with green cladding elements for the commercial units. That's give you an indication there of the type of units we're looking at. And I'll go back to the engineering plan for the access. This access is proposed from the A38, which is wide to 6.2 metres from the existing access, with a ghost right turn in from the south, no right turn out, and provision of a signalised crossing to the north here. And a footpath and cycleway 3 metres wide proposed running south from the site along the A38 to Old Main Road and the footpath to the village down here, down there. Paulet is a tier 3 village as defined by policy S2 of the local plan and is expected to provide adequate but basic levels of key services and facilities. And policy D35 of the local plan is supportive of the proposals, which provide or enhance community facilities identified in rural settlements where there is a need. There is no longer a convenience shop in Paulet, and given the proposed signalised crossing and improved footway and cycleways, the proposal is accessible to the village by walking and cycling. And since the proposed commercial element of the scheme consists of 5 small commercial units designed to provide small-scale employment opportunities, and therefore the policy is considered consistent with the scheme is considered consistent with policy D5 of the local plan. So the overall scheme itself, you can see, is in the built development is in the southern portion of the site, and you've got habitat creation as well as attenuation, drainage attenuation, and creation of more native hedges in the northern part of the site, but you have got a fair bit of tree planting across the site as a whole. And as such, this scheme is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers on this application, and I'd like to call forward to the table, please. Mrs. Wyatt. Oh no, Mrs. Wyatt isn't here, is she? She's the one to be read out. Yes, sorry, Debbie. Yes, please.
So this parishioner could not attend the meeting today. And she says, Dear Paulet Parish Council, Bristol Road planning application. With regards to the above, we would like to make you aware that due to the procrastination of the Parish Council, we were left with no alternative other than to find business premises outside of the village. We did this with heavy hearts, as we had our hearts set on being able to rent one of the new units and keeping our established business of 10 years local. We know from talking to many of our local clients that they were very upset that the original planning application had been rejected. They were all in favour of having a convenience store on their doorstep and keeping their hairdresser. It is now too late for us, but hope that the majority of villagers can now have what they want and that small local businesses can operate from the purpose-built units available on the proposed site. Assuring you of our best intentions, Jay Wyatt, for and on behalf of the Eclipse Hair and Beauty team.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call Mr. Jowett to come to the table, please. You have 3 minutes. If you just let us know when you're ready to start, and we'll set the timer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Bernie Jarrett from Jarrett
Next we have Councillor Warner of Pollock Parish Council, please. And you have 3 minutes, and if you just indicate when you'd like to start, we'll set the timer.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm the Vice Chair of Board.
You have to respond to the issues that you raised following our next speaker. Thank you. And finally, for this application, Tony Hammock of Property Link Consultants. Would you like to come forward, please? 3 minutes. Please let us know when you're ready to start.
Can you pull the microphone closer to you, just so people can hear better? Thanks. At home. Switch it on. There.
Okay.
Bring the microphone down.
Yeah.
That's
Good afternoon, Chairman and members. This application has evolved over 2 years, starting with pre-application advice from the Policy Officer and Planning Officer. As the committee report states, it has support from all the consultees apart from the Parish Council and Ward member. This is a policy compliant application providing local employment and benefits to the local smaller businessmen. Located alongside at the A38 road at Corlett, next to the Elms car sales, it is outside but well related to the settlement boundary. The site delivers 5 small commercial units and a convenience store. Following an online survey, the application has support from 78.38% of local residents. This is a fact, of which 64.86% thought that it was very important. Eclipse Hair and Beauty, as you heard, a local business, has confirmed in their letter to the council their interest in relocating to the site and verified their clients' support of the scheme. Sadly, since the planning process has taken over 2 years, they have had to move out of Paulet. Paulet has no local shops and no premises suitable for local businesses. Site delivers a convenience store and 5 small commercial units within easy, safe walking distance from the centre of the village, creating employment and reducing the use of the car. The proposed development provides residents with safe pedestrian access with a two-pin crossing and cycle path along the front of the site. And with the careful design and landscaping, the proposed development has little or no visual impact on the surrounding area, as the building line is consistent with the adjoining properties and only occupies less than 1/3 of the site. There is a huge local demand for smaller commercial units for local businesses to be used as workshops, offices, and for artisan activities. Locally, there are industrial units, but very little availability for smaller units to cater for the growing demand from people wishing to expand their businesses. The proposed development delivers a rural, eco-friendly local development catering for residents' unmet needs, providing local employment within walking distance of the centre of the village, reducing the use of the car and delivering safe, sustainable facility within minimum visual impact. We already have a convenience store signed up to go onto this site, the co-op, who are very keen to proceed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Sarah, can I ask you if you wish to respond to Councillor Warner's comments in regard to policy D19 and D15, please?
Yes, certainly. In terms of D19, the site is not within a protected landscape as set out in the definitions in the NPPF. It is, I accept, open countryside. I think there is an argument here because the land drops away to the south, and the site itself is actually, you can see, if I put up some of the photos there, you can see that the land drops away. So this is from the bottom of the site looking up, so the land does drop away. So that's the A38 up the north. So there will be some obstruction of use, but given that we've already got the elms next door, if you have a look at the site plan here, we've got the elms garage and the residential properties that extend further out into the countryside than this development would be. I would be uneasy about arguing that this has detrimental landscape harm. Because of the nature of the site drops away to the south. The views, the wider views to the Mendips will not be overly affected. And there aren't any public rights of way directly behind the site within the vicinity of the site. So there won't be anyone walking or cycling or horse riding that will be able to view directly onto the site. So that's why I've written this one up as an acceptable for landscape grounds. Also, we've got the mitigation. Remember, we've got a lot of mitigation on the site. We've got a lot of tree planting on the southern part of the site, and we've got a hedgerows being bolstered on the northern part of the site. So all of that combined means that we have a landscape impact that won't be what landscape architects call moderately adverse. It won't be adverse. It will be a neutral landscape impact. In terms of policy D15, and I did discuss this at length with the policy officer, it is technically over 1,000 square metres, and I did raise this issue with him about, I asked him to clarify because he quoted, Councillor Warner's right, he did quote gross internal area, and the application talks about gross external area. So I did ask him about that to clarify it, but the policy officer is not concerned because of the small size of the units themselves. So effectively, because they're going to be independent small units, they're not going to work as one unit. So he was less concerned about the impact. I show you some of the floor areas. You see these are broken up. And if members are overly concerned, we could potentially condition that. So that's the advice I've had from the head of the policy team is it is acceptable when assessed by policy D15, even though it's ever so it's slightly over the policy requirement. And the other thing to say about the plan permission, the recent plan permission that came out for 41 units in a shop, that's an outline application that is speculative. The inspector's decision says it's a speculative decision where what we have here is a full application with an end user. So it's slightly different characterisation of the retail use. And just one thing to clarify in my report, Councillor Healy was consulted. He just didn't comment, and Somerset Waste Services were consulted but didn't comment, and that's probably that's an omission on my part in my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. I must admit, I find this one quite difficult because having seen the layout and the design, they're all good and it looks like a nice development. My struggle is still getting over the principal plan. And do we have an illustration where it shows where the village development boundary is?
Chair, just to respond to that, I think we have to be careful about this scheme that's been approved. I said it's outline and it's speculative. That means they need to come in for reserved matters and they need to find an end user. And we've got an end user here, which is the co-op. And also, given that Paulette is a tier 3 settlement, tier 3 settlements are supposed to have a range of services and facilities. So there's nothing to say that a tier 3 settlement like Paulette couldn't have more than one shop. It's perfectly feasible for them to have more than one shop. I think we've got to be very careful about refusing something on the grounds there's not a need for it when we've got an outline application down the road that's speculative, and it says that. Louise has looked it up for me. It says that in the actual inspector's report as a speculative scheme. So I think we need to be really careful about that issue. In terms of the D15, it's 200 square metres over the 1,000 square metre requirement or in the policy. Now, I think this is an issue that I have talked at length with Nick Tate, the policy team. He is satisfied that although it is over the policy level in D15, because the units are in and of themselves small, we're not looking at one. I mean, if they were coming in with one big B8 unit, that would be problematic. The reason the policy officer is less concerned about this one is because they're smaller units. And if members wanted to, we could control that by a condition. I haven't done that. I've controlled it by use class, but we could control that. We can control the sizes. So the impact is going to be similar compared to a smaller set of schemes. It's not a big warehouse that we're looking at. We're looking at smaller units. So I think that's the difference that the policy officer explained to me, that why he is happy to support a recommendation for approval in principle on this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a question, just to go over the highways element again, please, with the junction? Could you just take us in on that again, please?
So, sorry, excuse my voice. So this is the proposed access. So access from the south, turning into the site has what's called a ghost lane. So an extra lane that is a right turn in. Traffic coming out and is not allowed to turn right. So it's only allowed to turn left. It's restricted. There's a footway on the other side linking the village to existing footway and Old Main Road. And there's a signalised crossing. We didn't agree what type of crossing, because that would be obviously the 106. But it will be signalised. So that's then the highway officer is satisfied that this level of work to the highway would be appropriate for this scheme and would not result in a problem for highway safety.
I've just got one. So is there a barrier of some sort that will prevent drivers from taking a right turn, or just a sort of signage? But is there some sort of road design that would make it very difficult or unappealing to do that?
There's what's called a tiger tail. Do you want me to point it out?
Yes, please.
So this is the ghost lane, and this is the tiger tail, which is the big stripes. So anyone turning right would have to come across the ghost lane and the tiger tail goes on.
Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you.
The reason is it takes longer to turn right than it does to turn left, especially on the A38. So to avoid queuing, and also for safety reasons, because obviously if you're turning right, it's more difficult than turning left because you're looking both ways rather than one way, if you see what I mean. So it's from a highway safety point of view, because you're crossing over one lane, aren't you?
I get that, but is that not true of every junction in the country? Sorry, I'm not.
Councillor Martin and then Councillor Ham, please. Councillor Murphy, sorry. I think there are difficulties for those online hearing what we're saying. Thanks.
I really think you must have carried quite humble. I get carried away. Very sorry. Yeah, so when I come down there, this thing I've got hazard. Get my
Thank you.
They're still having problems online with clearing things. Okay, so I don't know, can we just look into it and see what might be causing it?
Okay, shall we hold the meeting for a
Yeah.
few minutes to try and look into the sound issues? I'm sorry, everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Hendry. We think it's, I think it's something to do with the hour. It goes through the hour.
You're all over when technology.
You again, because I've asked Helen's online, Helen, our faithful, I've asked if she can hear Matt because it's. Helen heard me. She can't hear you. Okay, I think let's change this cable. A minute, okay. Start down. Get the new camera. I think. My fingers are too fat. Sorry. It's like a Dalek, wasn't it then? It's me sticking my finger in the wrong place. Okay. I'm going to turn it off. We'll start again. You're just going to have to be really, really quiet. Okay. For all the people at home, we have just replaced a cable we think was faulty. So this is Debbie. If you can hear me, please let me know. And I'm going to get somebody else to speak and we'll see if you can hear them.
Hello, my name is Matt Martin and I'm the Vice Chair. Can you hear me online?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I'm. Side to side of cars.
Didn't require them to do that. Committee D15 does say at the bottom, within managing employment delivery, that small scale employment and industry justice is within a well related boundary. And that's the advice I've had from the policy team, is because they are small scale. We didn't ask them three out of one, where we didn't ask them to look at quite they asked them.
Restarting the meeting, resuming the meeting. Thank you. So, before we do that, though, I just need to say that Councillor Ferguson thought he'd emailed me with his apologies. I think he sent it to the wrong email address, but the intent was there, so we will add those to the apologies. Right, so we'll go on to agenda item 7, page 85, which is the application for Lloyds Bank in Cheddar. So Louise, you take us through the application, please.
Lovely. Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon. This application is before committee as the officer's recommendation is contrary to the view of the parish councils. This slide just shows the relevant and main policies from the Sedgemoor local plan and the Cheddar neighbourhood plan. The site is in the main built-up area of Cheddar. And the application relates to an existing private car park accessed via Lower North Street and the adjacent overgrown land, as you can see green there. The application seeks consent to extend the parking area into the adjacent land. To facilitate this, a 3-metre opening will be created just in the centre of the picture there by removing a section of the existing wall. These are some Google Street Views showing the limited view of the site. The red arrow is showing the location of the new car park. That's the access to the car park. And as you enter into the site, and to the left of the Range Rover here, just here where my cursor is, you can see there's a footpath that runs along the boundary of the site. This is the view north and the view across the east, towards the east of the site. And just, this is the approximate location here below the green shrubbery and hedgerow there, for the removal of the 3-metre section of the wall. This is a view of the site over the wall, and the overgrown and unused area of the site where the new car park is proposed. As you exit the site, these are the views towards the north and likewise towards the south. So the main considerations here, the application site is within the development boundary for Cheddar, and therefore the principle of the development is supported by policy S2. The site is within the Cheddar Conservation Area, however the wall is not a listed structure. The wall is located in a backland location and does not form a prominent part of the street scene, with only fleeting views of the wall from Bath Street to the south. The wall is currently 13.5 metres long and 2.3 metres high, and the proposal requires the removal of a 3-metre section of the wall. This is to allow access to the proposed parking area. The conservation area appraisal of the overall character of Cheddar and its conservation area does refer to the use of limestone in Cheddar's older buildings and boundary walls, and was widespread and contributes enormously to its built character. However, there is no other mention of the walls in the appraisal or any reference to the contribution of the aforementioned walls within this section, specifically related to the part of the conservation area for this proposal. Due to the scale of the wall that is to be removed, the limited 3-metre width, and the limited views of this from the wider area, it is considered that the proposal would result in a less than substantial harm to the conservation area and would deliver a public benefit of providing additional off-street parking. A condition is also recommended to secure details of the materials to be used for the wall piers. Considering the other potential impacts on the historic environment, the site is within an area of high archaeological potential, and South West Heritage have offered no objections to the proposal. In respect to potential impact on residential amenities of neighbouring occupiers, the proposal is unlikely to generate a level of noise and disturbance that would be significantly harmful to allow us to refuse the application on those terms. And in relation to considerations of highway safety, the Highways Authority considers standing advice applies to this proposal. And the development seeks to utilise the existing vehicular access, which already provides for 8 parking spaces. And whilst the proposal would increase the number of users and parking spaces served, given the low speeds associated with vehicles on the highway at the location of the access, due to the junction and the narrow road width, the access is considered to be acceptable. The case officer has reviewed the proposal in detail with the highways officer, who has not considered that the proposal would have a detrimental impact on highway safety. Considering potential ecology implications, the ecologist has considered and reviewed the proposal and has recommended conditions to secure appropriate mitigation and biodiversity enhancement measures. And therefore the office's recommendation is to approve the application with conditions in respect of ecology and to secure the details of the materials to be used for the piers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have two speakers on this application, and I'd like to call Jill Davis first, please. Who is objecting? Thank you. You have 3 minutes. Just let us know when you're ready to start and we'll start the timer.
Good afternoon. My objections to the vehicular access from Lloyds Bank, former Lloyds Bank onto Bath Street, which is actually the A371, the main road to Cheddar. This is Cheddar's High Street, and it's the main part of the conservation area in the centre of Cheddar. It has very narrow pavements. I was measuring yesterday, 30 inches. It's very heavily used by pedestrians. Pushchairs, wheelchairs can't use it. It's so narrow, they have to go in the road. It's used for shopping, journeys to schools and preschool. The Kings of Wessex, the comprehensive school, is just a few metres further along the same street. Cheddar First School and Preschool are in the Hayes, which is some 500 metres away. In the past, when people have asked for the pavements to be widened, the county surveyor has said, oh, no, that's not possible. So you're not interested in pedestrian safety. There is actually a public footpath running from Bath Street, where in your photo on the screen you had a figure standing on Bath Street, a little gap in the low wall onto Bath Street. That's a public footpath that runs to Punnock Close, which is behind the site, and that was a planning gain when Punnock Coast went through some 20 years ago, and it's very, very well used. And if this was correctly marked out, it should be 1.8 metres, i.e. 6 foot in a old money, and that would take off 1.8 off this gap the developer's proposing onto Bath Street. They're saying, oh, 3 metres. Well, if you take 1.8 off for this public footpath, then it isn't 3 metres, is it? The last time I saw any traffic figures was over 20 years ago. It was 12,000 a day on this road, the A371. I assume it will have gone up considerably in that time. As was pointed out by the officer, there is already vehicular access from Lower North Street to the back of the former bank. I don't see how anybody could think that this was all right, particularly a highway person. It's just so wrong. And I would urge you to have a site meeting so you can see what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. I've now asked Councillor Panshos to the table, please, on behalf of Cheddar Parish Council.
These, each comes with baggage.
As you know, you've got the 3 minutes whenever you wish to start.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. This car park was originally for Lloyds Bank employees and customers, so the traffic was very light and only held about 8 cars maximum. The report by the case officer with all the paragraphs from the MPPF, local plans, Cheddar neighbourhood plan is fine. This is for 20 car parking spaces, so it's going up quite considerably. But there are 2 main issues with this application. Dealing first with highway safety. The entrance to the car park is extremely narrow, and the bank building on the south side juts out about 2 metres, as you saw from the pictures, so it's blind, making us blind to drivers exiting the car park. The house wall on the north side does not provide sufficient splays, so if the car is leaving and another car wishes to enter, there is a major problem. Highways, as usual, have only given their usual standing advice comment, which in this case is not helpful. As a council, we are very concerned about pedestrian safety with 20 cars going in and out all the time. Regarding conservation, your county conservation officer has advised that the wall is shown on maps dating from 1840. So this is probably much older and is in the conservation area. Once a gap is knocked through the wall, it cannot be brought back. The conservation officer states that the application has failed to identify significance in relation to this wall. The wall has significance due to the age of the wall, the historic purpose of the wall, and so on, as you can read in your own papers. His final comment is, this proposal cannot be supported on heritage grounds, as the proposal seeks consent to impose substantial harm to an element within the conservation area of Cheddar. He has made a second comment that any further information to assist with the significance of the wall has not been submitted, so his previous comments are still relevant. This committee, therefore, cannot go against its own conservation officer's comments with regard to this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Louise, would you like to respond to those issues around highway safety and issues, please? Yes, of course. As set out in the presentation, I'll deal with the sort of highways access and safety issues first, Chair. This is an existing, let's go back to the photograph of the entrance. This is an existing access, and we are considering here, yes, the intensification of that, but then it is existing. We have the car manoeuvres, the vehicles going in and out at the moment. It's completely noted the local situation, the width of the pavements and the use and high traffic of pedestrians and users there in the locality. However, this is not considered to be such a significant intensification of the use of the access there to warrant a refusal on those grounds. And to pick up the point from the parish council there, the officers themselves did discuss this in further detail with the Highways Authority. Their comments were standing advice. However, the officers did then speak separately with the Highways officers to check and clarify whether they had concerns regarding that intensification, and the position is as set out before you today. And then in respect of the conservation comments, our own conservation officer did say that he couldn't support the proposal put forward as there wasn't the justification in terms of heritage evidence and supporting information with the application for him to be able to reach a position of support, and therefore he maintained an objection. However, the officers have assessed this. We have looked at the reasoning and the justification in both the national and local planning policy, and the removal, as concluded in the report, the removal of a 3-metre section of the wall that is not highly visible in the wider area has to be weighed up. That harm and that level of harm, as per the national planning policy guidance, has to be weighed up with any public benefit. And we do feel that that is balanced here with the benefit of additional car parking for Cheddar. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Bradford.
Is there a car parking issue at present in Cheddar?
I understand that there has been encouragement for support of additional car parking provision in Cheddar.
I was going to suggest you limit the car park number of cars down to 15 rather than 20, not make it
Councillor
across.
Bradford, your microphone's gone off, thanks.
Sorry, reduce it from 20 to 15, not make us a claustrophobic. That would.
We have to, and I have to encourage members, we have to determine the application that is before us and that's in front of us today. If there were, other considerations, we're not here to negotiate and make amendments to the scheme, I'm afraid.
I'm always a man for compromise. That's why we've got on. And you have to do that sometimes, and it's always around any problem sometimes if you do that. I do think sometimes, to me, it looks Number one, it's a shame Lloyds Bank isn't sent there still, that's the first thing. 'Cause these banks disappearing from all these areas is detrimental to the whole area, detrimental to people who want to go out and meet, especially the elderly people. It's not good in the first place. And probably 20, I feel is too many, that's all I'm gonna say, thank you.
Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. Couple of points to, if I can, to get clarified. The first speaker we had was talking about the access onto Bath Street. I think, having read the parish council's comment, there seemed to be some confusion as to whether there was a secondary access being created or not. Plan, as far as I can see, doesn't do that. But can you just confirm that is the case? There is no access coming out onto Bath Street?
No, that existing wall that's in that photograph that we were just showing is to remain as per this plan. There is only one new opening and one removal of a section of wall. The existing access remains. There's not a new access.
Also, from reading their comments earlier, my understanding is the opening has now been shrunk over the original application because it seemed, I think it was a 6-metre opening, which they've now reduced to 3 metres to minimise the impact on the wall. So, I mean, I'm disappointed that our conservation officer wasn't able to agree this. I can understand the argument. I mean, had that wall been on the frontage, I think I'd be more perturbed because it would be very visible. It's visible from within the car park, but really not from anywhere else. So happy to go with the recommendation on the basis that we have got that reassurance that this is one access we're talking about internal to the car park. We're not creating something else onto Bath Street.
No, there's no additional access. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. So we've got a proposer and I've got Councillor Henry, Bolt and Martin who's.
So, with Councillor Phil, I concur and I agree with everything he said. I couldn't have put it better myself. So yes, I second what he's saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bolt, is that what you? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It's a comment rather than a question. I think Lloyds is the only bank in Cheddar. There are plenty of ATMs around. There's not a bank. I withdraw. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So if I'm looking around the room and there's nobody indicating to speak, so we've got a proposer and a seconder to approve the officer's recommendation to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. So 7 for, any against? And any abstentions? 3 abstentions. So that is, 3, I do apologise. 4 abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you. So we will now move on to agenda item number 8.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to count again?
Yes, count me.
So all those in favour, please show.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Yes, so, yeah, okay, that's right.
Okay, all those against, please show. And abstentions. And 4 abstentions.
That's right.
That work?
Yeah,
Right.
and 4 abstentions.
Thank you, then clarified that, so that is still carried, thank you. Okay, so we're now on to agenda item 8 on page 93, and this is the application for land adjacent to River Axe, Lower Weir, Axbridge, and this is the paper for which we've had the supplementary plan as well, just to note. So, Louise, will you be taking us through this one, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. So this application is for an erection of an agricultural building and hardcore area. I'll just explain to you the additional paper that was just sent out, and actually the presentation covers that for you. The original location plan for the site went out on the original officer report and committee report for you, and that was just corrected with the amended location of the proposal through the additional paper for you. So these are the relevant policies and their local plan. And the application site itself is located to the north of the village of Lower Weir. The application relates to a parcel of land that is accessed via an agricultural track that has recently been constructed. As you can see on the right-hand side here, you've got quite a snaking access track alongside the vine there. The application seeks consent for the erection of an agricultural building with a footprint of approximately 19.5 times 42.5 metres. The bridge height is proposed to be 9 metres with an eaves height of 5 metres. The building is proposed to be constructed from concrete panels, Yorkshire boarding and fibre cement sheeting on the roof. The applicant farms 150 head of cattle, and the proposal is to provide cattle housing, including within the building a dung store, machinery store, straw store, and to provide a covered yard to prevent foul water entering the clean water discharge. The proposal also includes a landscaping scheme, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there. This is a view of the site from the road. This is Google Street View from 2020, so absence of the track that has since been constructed. The building is proposed to be sited behind the hedge that you can see there. This is a wider view there with the arrow showing the proposed location. The building is proposed to be sited parallel to the hedgerow boundary there. And then this is views back towards the south. And a view back along the track to the south with the proposal to the left of the photograph. The application site is outside of any development boundary in the countryside, however relates to an agricultural development that requires such location. The principle of the development is therefore supported by policy CO1. Considering flood risk, only the access track to the building is within the flood zone 3, and therefore the proposal is considered to be acceptable in this respect. In regard to surface water management, the IDB have reviewed the proposal and have recommended appropriate conditions. Moving on to ecology concerns, Natural England have requested an assessment of the proposals and the impact on air quality, and this has been submitted and reviewed by Natural England, who consider it to be satisfactory. In respect of the other ecological matters, Somerset Ecology requested ecology reports, and following their submission have recommended appropriate conditions to be secured to cover biodiversity enhancement and mitigation measures. The application site is within an area, again, of high archaeological potential, and South West Heritage have raised no objection. In respect of highway safety, the Highways Authority has stated they have no observations, and given that the proposal is for an agricultural building that is to be served by the existing agricultural access and track, it's not considered to be unacceptable. A public right-of-way runs through the site, and the right-of-way officer has recommended a condition to secure a diversion order prior to works that would impact upon the footpath. Moving on to visual amenity and landscape, the Mendip Society has objected to the proposal. The application site itself is approximately 1.1 kilometres from the edge of the AONB, and given this distance and location of the proposed building in relative proximity to the existing built environment, it's not considered that there would be a detrimental impact on the protected landscape. Additionally, the proposal includes that landscaping, as you can see on the earlier plan, additionally just over 1,000 square metres of woodland to be planted that would also soften the visual impact further. This is a slide showing the revised location of the application. So during the determination of the scheme, the location of the proposed building has been amended. This is considered by officers to soften the visual impact on the surrounding landscape by having the building and site move nearer to existing built form. Further comments from Wear Parish Council have been received since the publication of the committee papers, stating that their preference was for the original siting of the building. And officers consider that the amended location that is now for determination in front of you today is acceptable. And members obviously note that, again, we have to determine and have a look at the scheme that's in front of us today. Considering the details of the building, this is acceptable for agricultural development. The closest dwelling is quite some distance from the site itself. There'll be no unacceptable residential amenity impact. Environmental health have recommended conditions to secure the management plan for manure and animal bedding. And it should be noted that a number of third-party representations have raised concerns about the impact of the proposal on the nearby adjacent campsite and the occupiers thereof. Some of these relate to impacts on views, but this is not a material consideration in determining the planning application. Other comments raise concerns that the proposal would over-dominate the campsite. However, given the seasonal use of the site, the hedgerow that is between the building and the campsite, and the distances and boundaries is not considered to have a detrimental impact on those users. So therefore, it's officer's recommendation to grant planning permission with relevant conditions in respect of ecology, waste management, surface water management, and the diversion of the public right of way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this item, and it's Ian Ford. Would you like to come forward, please? And you have 3 minutes. Just let us know when you are ready to start.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I speak on behalf of my client, Mark Babbage, who is a farmer, and I hasten to add he wasn't the one who was called today, Councillor Martin, earlier this afternoon. My client farms 231 acres, including 80 acres at Lower Weir that he purchased a few years ago. The remainder of the land he farms being at Hewish, Mark, and rented land on the Mendips. At Lower Weir, he has no buildings, so we propose an agricultural building for winter housing suitable for modern day farming. The land is currently grazed by 75 of his cattle. The land is farmed under mid-tier stewardship without the use of fertilizers or sprays. As part of this stewardship, he secured funding for fencing the fields and forming a track along the river that reduces the risk of cattle polluting the watercourses. That work has been carried out to a high standard. The track was put in place not necessarily to facilitate the agricultural building, but to prevent the land from becoming rutted and also to benefit the walkers who tend to use this track rather than the footpath. Apart from the overwintering the cattle, the proposed building, it's also needed for storage of hay, straw, and provision for covered dung storage to prevent dirty water entering the watercourses. My client has some winter housing at Hewish and some on the rented building on the Mendips, but he has to vacate the one on the Mendips. So to move the cattle from Lower Weir to Hewish with a standard cattle box would require 15 round trips of 20 miles, equaling 300 miles just moving those cattle in winter from Lower Weir to Hewish and the reverse in the spring. Furthermore, hay made at Lower Weir would have to be removed to Hewish to feed the cattle in winter and move the dung back to Lower Weir for natural fertilizing in the spring. Clearly, all these moves are unsustainable and makes the case for the building on the site. Noise from the cattle is usually associated when cows are parted from calves or when bulling. These are store cattle. Very little noise will emanate from the site, other than what would be expected from a normal farming activity. The principle of this application is very simple. He just wants to build and put his cattle in. It's supported by the NFU and rural agents Green Slate Taylor Hunt. My client has worked closely with the case officer, eventually arriving at a site that's deemed acceptable. The scheme has met air assessment requirements. He provided ecological assessment acceptable to the ecology officer, had provided biodiversity enhancement that includes the planting of the small copse to the north, as has been mentioned. This will also help reduce the impact of the building as seen from the Mendips. We appreciate the building is now closer to the A38 and residential properties than he preferred in the first instance. But he could have a bigger building than what's proposed under prior approval even further from this site. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Members, any questions, comments? Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, there's obviously a need for this. From a personal point of view, I've probably been happier with the original location as opposed to the one it's been moved to because it's moved it nearer to the residents and caused, but that's not the applicant's decision. That's what we've encouraged them to do. And as the officer said, it's got to be bad enough to say it's not acceptable rather than just there might be something else that would be better. So unfortunately, I can't say no on those grounds at all. Again, most of the things have been covered in terms of drainage and rights of way. They're covered in the conditions, which are the, again, concerns locally. The one thing I might ask if we could have one additional condition to look at would be a condition controlling the colour of the building. We have not a million miles away from this site had buildings that have gone up. One of them was a beautiful mustard yellow, which stood out in the countryside like a sore thumb. So I'm not saying we need to condition what the colour is now, but just say there is a condition that has to be agreed with officers, so that we make sure it is a colour that blends in rather than something that stands out. But if that was acceptable, I would hope that could be added.
Yes, we can do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sounds like a real need for this extra building. A lot of the things required of it's been jumped through because natural England, etc., puts these different laws on buildings now, etc., regarding dirty water and what have been. This has all been addressed, looks like it. The landscaping, which is a very important thing, has amended to raise a slight bit of an objection. So the minute that matures and gets bigger and bigger and whatever, then some of these buildings aren't noticed, especially if, like Councillor Filmer commented, if it's the right colour, they blend in, and in 5-6 years' time, you would know it was there, and you'd have a happy farmer. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to move to accept the Hopper's recommendation.
Can you say that into the microphone?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, my depth of day. Old age. So can I move the recommendation?
Is that with the additional condition regarding the colour?
Colour, I think so, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bradford. So we've got a proposal, but Councillor Martin who indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chair. It's just following on from what Councillor Filmer said a moment ago. Actually, I mean, there's clearly a need, and I can see, you know, how this would work to the satisfaction of all. But I wonder if I could ask my colleague to just go over again the reasons why explicitly it was moved from position A to position B, just so we have that absolutely clear. Thank you.
Okay, this was before my presence here at Somerset Council. However, I understand from the case officer that it was brought in from the left-hand side here, location of the building, to this location on the right-hand side to be more sort of in line with the built form and built development around the site, to bring it closer to existing buildings rather than it being slightly more detached and more into the open countryside. That's my understanding.
Thank you very much. And do we know, I appreciate that it wasn't your application initially, but do we know whether anybody actually objected it to being out in what we call the open countryside, aside from those that are running the rules, as it were? It does seem a bit odd to move it closer to people.
The Mendip Society expressed in the first instance that it had a significant negative visual impact, and then they acknowledged in their second reconsultation on the amended location that the development, and they acknowledged that it had been moved a little further from the AONB area, presumably to limit and negate the visual impact. So it was the Mendip Society.
Thank you. Anybody heard of the Mendip Society? Yeah? I don't. No. Thank you very much.
So I'm not seeing anybody else. Councillor Hendry. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I have absolutely no issue or problem with this whatsoever, nothing, and I'm happy to second Councillor Bradford. Grant permission.
With the additional.
Yes, of course, very common. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a proposal, Councillor Bradford, seconded by Councillor Hendry, to accept the officer's recommendation to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. I think that is unanimous. Okay, that's unanimous and that's carried. Thank you very much. So that takes us on to agenda item 9 on page 109, and this is the application for land south of Brent Road, East Brent, Highbridge.
We need to swap.
Okay, well, just bear with us a moment, please.
They've just missed. No, it's this. So the screen light in the room has got anything to do with it.
Committee.
Yes, but we've changed the cable now.
It's working now.
It's working now, but it wasn't previously. We were using the long cable. And that's the one that's broken.
This one, I think, maybe it's one more, so.
Well, it was in the one.
Got a view of it.
Right, okay, so this application relates to a site between Brent Knoll and East Brent. The site itself was granted a planning permission on appeal in 2010 for the formation of a gypsy site, which included the erection of a static caravan. The site was then subsequently developed with a day room approved 3 years later. So this is the application site here. Car standing area here. On to the south with the mobile home located in the centre there. The site is accessed onto Brent Road and with the day room located in the northeast corner there. So the application before us today is for the erection of a dwelling to replace the existing mobile home within the site. So the application site is outlined in red with the adjacent land owned by the applicant. With the land also associated with the site outlined in blue to the south. What we're dealing with today is the mobile home, which is located here. So the mobile home itself is quite substantial. I'll get to the photographs in a minute from the street scene. But what we're looking at is the erection of a single-storey dwelling located on this footprint. So we have the day room located to the corner here, with dwelling set back in the position of the existing mobile home here, and the vehicle access onto Brent Road here, all remaining as existing. The proposed dwelling itself will be formed of stonework to the external walls and concrete tiles to the roof. It will have an L-shaped footprint with 3 bedrooms inside, an open plan dining, kitchen, living area on the right-hand side of the drawing there. There's the view of the site taken from Brent Road via Google. So the mobile home, sorry, this mouse in the middle of the slide. The mobile home is located here, and basically what we would see in the dwelling located on top of it, with the mobile home having first been removed. All other aspects of the site will remain the same. These are some photographs taken from the street scene. So as you can see, the site itself is fairly substantial with brick walls to the front and landscaping to the side boundaries. It's not considered there'll be any visual impact in the surrounding area, taking into account the character of the site as it is now. The distance of the site from existing residential properties also ensures that the replacement will not have any sort of significant impact on residential amenity. Going back to the principle of development, the site itself is in the countryside. It is outside the development boundaries of East Brent, which is the closest settlement with a development boundary. So what we're looking at is a replacement of the existing structure. Now, it doesn't, strictly speaking, fall within the replacement dwelling policy, which talks about the replacement of an existing permanent dwelling. And in those sort of circumstances is one of the exceptions to the countryside policy where residential development is appropriately controlled. However, in this case, it's considered that the circumstances regarding the family that currently reside within the mobile home are such that we would need to take into consideration the public sector equality duty as part of the Equalities Act, bearing in mind the existing occupation for gypsy traveller groups. So in the supporting information provided within the application, the applicants have confirmed they are willing to accept a condition which would require the occupation of the future dwelling to also be for gypsy and traveller use. This would be consistent with the existing planning permission that was granted for the site, and as such would not result in the loss of an existing pitch for the community. Taking into account all the other material considerations, it's not considered that there will be any material increase in the impact of the development on the surrounding area. And as an update to the presentation, the parish council have confirmed that they have no issues with the application, as the issues regarding the sewage treatment plant and the floor levels in respect of flood risk have been addressed through the design and the information provided within the application. So at the moment, we have an application before us today with no objection from any statutory consultee or residential or residents, sorry. So in that respect, it's considered the application is acceptable and is recommended before you today for approval, subject to conditions at the end of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Liam. We've got one person registered to speak, and that is James Leafield, who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant, but he's not here today, is he? Debbie, I understand that you'll be reading out his statement.
He is online, but he is experiencing his own technical issues, so he asked if I could please read the statement.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I am James Leafield of LSL Architecture, the agent on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Humphreys for the removal of a static home and erection of a bungalow. I just wanted to take this opportunity to present to you the reasoning behind this application. These are: our client would like to live in a more permanent structure to suit their needs and wants. They have lived here for a number of years and have developed the site sensitively to suit their needs. In recent years, they have bought the land surrounding the site, clearly cementing their love and longevity for the site and the surrounding area. The proposal is to replace their static home with a more robust, energy-efficient home, whereby we have designed flood preventative measures as the site lies within flood zone 3, as identified within the flood risk assessment by WCEI. It has been advised that there is a 300 millimeter finished floor level above the lowest ground level on the site. An objection was raised by the parish council as well as the Environment Agency by the flood risk assessment confirms the internal floor height will be raised, which mitigates any potential risk. The site benefits from flood defences and is at low risk of flooding from a fluvial source. One other item was raised by the parish council is the existing septic tank. The site can continue to use the existing drainage system. However, it has been offered that a package treatment plant is installed, which will be more environmentally friendly in terms of discharge and discharging to ground and not a watercourse. I must add that I have worked closely with Liam on this application to ensure that this does not see the loss of a traveller's pitch and that static homes are considered highly vulnerable, which can only be seen as a benefit to the applicant. I do hope that this can support this application based on the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Members, Councillor Hendry, then Councillor Filmer.
I'll let Councillor Palmer go first. Please, no, please do.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, I mean, as members could see from the pictures, it's an incredibly well-maintained site. It was, for those of you who are a bit long in the tooth like me, you'll remember we had a site visit out there when it was first being talked about, which was interesting. But the site has been really well managed and really well looked after. The reassurance that the case officer has obtained that this remains a gypsy and traveller site, for me, is is important because we don't have enough of those. And if we start losing sites, that would be a concern. So the fact that the applicants have been happy to accept that, I think is critical to this site. And just we'd just like reassurance again from the case officer that because it's a permanent dwelling, that wouldn't preclude any other Gypsy Traveller family in the future using that site.
No, indeed. I mean, condition 3, we've worded it so it's available for anyone within the community to use. Again, it was an important aspect for us as well because we didn't want to be encouraging the loss of these sort of, you know, well-used and well-maintained pitches. So no, it was something that was offered by the applicants within their submission, and it was based on conversations we had previously with them prior to your application coming in.
Excellent. Based on that, Chair, I mean, I'm happy to move the recommendation for granting permission.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually not far from my house, and also Councillor Fulmer's. We both live within a couple of 100 metres. Every time I drive past this place, I always look in the gate. I'm a white tuber, really, and we think it's so well kept, immaculate, absolutely lovely, lovely place. If you take away the portable home, or call it what you will, the stadium, and replace it with a really nice bungalow, they're doing a real good favour to the place because it's already immaculate and it look even better. So absolutely no problem whatsoever, and I agree with Councillor Fulmer. Happy to second it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? No? Okay, so we've got a proposer and a seconder to grant the officer's recommendation. To all those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Okay, excellent, thank you. So that brings us to the final application of the afternoon, which is agenda item 10, page 117. And this is a planning application for land to the north of Lode Pool Overy. And I think we're just setting up for this application. Thank you. Yeah.
So don't get too excited.
Yes.
Would you like to introduce, because you're new to
Yeah,
the committee, aren't you? Just
yeah. I'm Sap, I'm one of the senior planning officers over, well, I was over at Sedgemoor actually until about March, kind of June, July this year, because obviously we had some shortages in the South team. As I initially started with South Somerset back in July 2022, but we had some staff shortages in the Sedgemoor area, so I came up and covered and helped out with Sedgemoor for about 6-7 months or so. So this was one of the applications I've been working with when it came in. Obviously it's been ongoing for a bit of a while, so I've moved back down to South, but I've kept some of my Sedgemoor applications for the sake of continuity. So obviously there's no break in terms of getting moved around and delayed. So that's why I've agreed to hold on to a certain amount of applications, and this was one of those applications I held on to. So obviously I've been involved with it from the beginning, so I said I'd hold on to it, so we could kind of see it progress from where it's come from to where it's got to now, rather than it being disjointed and then people coming in and out and just making it more difficult, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. Oh, there you are. Okay, so sorry, a bit of IT issues there. So in a nutshell, obviously we've got, that 15 neighbours and third parties were consulted directly by letter, so that's where letters were received. We are aware that there were 5 representations received, and obviously this is not really doing it just for representation, but just try and keep it brief for members. These are the kind of the grounds that they were objecting to the application on, these grounds here. But bear in mind, but an outline application, so we're only looking to establish the principle of development and the means of access at this stage. So all of the matters will obviously to be determined in the reserved matters application. The main reason obviously we're having this meeting today is because our recommendation of approval is contrary to the comments received from Albury Parish Council. So obviously we're keen to address those objections the best we can, and so is the agent as well on this one. So obviously some of the main objections that the parish council had to this one were sort of saying in the beginning initially, that's fine. In the beginning initially, sorry about that. The agent had proposed market dwellings outside of settlement boundary, although it was adjacent to, it was outside of a settlement boundary. So obviously that was not acceptable according to the principle of the local plan. So what the agent did is they had amended the application to include self-built dwellings, which are acceptable if they're adjacent to settlement boundary. So they had agreed to do that. But there's also, bear in mind, a class Q fallback position on this application as well. So obviously what the applicant wanted to do was bring forth better quality of more high quality dwellings. So that's why we were keen to try and work on a pragmatic solution. Initially, they were reluctant to budge on the market dwellings, but they have changed that now to self-build. And obviously, as established, we carried out consultation with the planning policy team as well. And there is a demand for self-built plots in Overy. So it's not that there is a demand there to be met. The application, can you hear me now? Sorry. The application was 8 houses, including affordable housing, but obviously this was one of the objections that the parish council had in the beginning, but we've now changed that to self-build. In terms of although it's outside the planning line, but basically the parish council are saying that because it's outside the planning line, the settlement boundary should not be granted. And also the argument that the parish council has made is that there's no 5-year plan for housing development, and the application then gives a chance for speculative applications. So I'm sorry, we have to disagree with that, because obviously we have some firm policies in place in the Sedgemoor local plan about when development outside of settlement boundaries is acceptable and when it's not. And in this situation, obviously, these are self-built dwellings that are adjacent to the settlement boundary, and therefore they do comply with local plan policies. So they can't be speculative in the sense that, any development can then be permitted, because it still has to be policy compliant with the local plan, and this application clearly is. In terms of, obviously we noticed concerns about contamination, the contaminated land and noise survey as well. But again, that would fall more into the reserve matters, and that can be addressed at the reserve matter stage for appropriate conditions requiring contamination investigation. That's an issue that can be resolved through conditions at the reserve matter stage. And finally, this obviously again talking about the specific policies in question, D20, D2, and D25, and also the concerns, obviously, and I think that D9 is a self-build policy, but it does comply with the self-build policy, because now they are proposing the self-build dwelling. So there's no principal reason or policy reason, but we can maintain an objection to this anymore, because they've obviously now followed the local plan requirements, and the planning policy team have also fully supported this application as well. We carried out additional consultation with them to make sure that they were on board with it, and they're fully given their support to the proposals. So that's the site location plan in the red line at the bottom there. The settlement boundary is just on this side. So it's just adjacent to, and the blue line is affordable housing that's recently been approved on the other side of the road. So that was recently approved. That's an aerial view of the proposed site layout. So these are the proposed dwellings here. These are just some photos on the site. So it's a bit of a rainy day on this day, so some of the photos might be a bit blurry, so apologies about that. That's the front of the site as viewed from the road, and that's, sorry, I took a fair amount of pictures, but I tried to pick out the key ones so that you can get an idea as to what the site looks like at the moment. So as you can see, it was a former farmyard. It's fallen into derelict use at the moment, so it's brownfield land. Obviously, no productive use at the moment, so it would be bringing the brownfield site back into active use. It would be making a much more better contribution to the area than it is currently. This is the back of the site. Obviously, there's a lot of biodiversity issues around here because there's more natural surroundings on this portion of the site, the eastern portion of the site. But again, like I said, the reserve matters, we can deal with those kind of things through appropriately worded conditions. So obviously, again, this sort of touches, I'm not going to read from the whole thing because you can see that, but just to kind of summarize again what I was touching on earlier about brownfield land, but this is part, at least the western end of the site is brownfield. So at least that portion of the site being redeveloped does represent redevelopment of a brownfield site, which would accord with paragraph 7123 of the NPPF. So they've got the national planning policy support as well. And again, just touching on what I was saying earlier, there are 10 people on the register. So 1 second about that. If there are 10 people on the register in Overy for Southfield Plus, and the current proposals would provide 5 of these Southfield dwellings for that. Now, obviously, we're aware that there are 7 dwellings, but 5 of them are Southfield. And 1 second, sorry. And although I understand obviously what the parish council is saying, but we have a 5-year land supply of housing for the Sedgemoor district, the proposal still make an important contribution to meeting housing requirements overall. And the NPPF, especially these 2 paragraphs, 17(1), 2, 3, talk about bringing forward smaller sites to help make a contribution to the national housing shortage. Obviously, bear in mind, in terms of the remaining 2 dwellings, the applicant does have a fallback position in the Class Q for these 2. So obviously, taking a pragmatic approach here in terms of the remaining 2, we have tried to obviously, incorporate them into this scheme because, they've got the fallback of the Class Q, so the principle's already been established under this Class Q application anyway. So for the sake of being pragmatic and, we want more consistency between the dwellings we're going to approve the South build and the 2 previously approved Class Qs, to create more integration between those 2 forms of development, it made more sense to try and incorporate all these 7 into one application instead. For means of access, obviously, as you've seen earlier on in the site access plan, there is a new vehicle access upload pool. 15 open car parking spaces are being provided and 5 carports. So in terms of car parking provision, there's sufficient car parking spaces as per the car parking requirements outlined in the car parking strategy. So there shouldn't be an overflow of vehicles on Load Pool or any other adjacent or nearby highways. Somerset Council Highways had initially objected to the proposals, but there was a lot of discussion between myself, a former principal officer, Dean is left now, and the agent and highways, and they basically submitted additional information, which I'll show members in the subsequent slides, so they're a bit bigger, to address these concerns. But obviously, I'm not going to read all this out, but in a nutshell, the highways were happy with the additional information provided, and they've agreed to subsequently withdraw any objections to these proposals on highway grounds, and they're willing to fully support the proposals on highway grounds. But also, because the amount of car parking provided meets the car parking guidelines, and obviously, and there's enough space within the site currently for manoeuvring as per the standing advice, there's not really any highway grounds where we could substantiate an objection to. And just to add one additional thing, in terms of the principle of the development, we are happy to add a condition limiting the 5 dwellings to self-build only if members feel, they're worried about setting a negative precedent outside adjacent to the settlement boundary. So we can add a further condition if need be to control that if members feel that's necessary. But obviously now we can leave that to the end if they feel that that's an additional safeguard that's required. So this is the additional information that the applicant has submitted to address the highway concerns. Sorry, the drawing's a bit small, there's a lot of information on there, but it just kind of gives you an indication as to the highway visibility space that can be achieved from the proposed access in each direction, and showing that there's a good amount of highway visibility in each direction emerging from the access and entering onto the proposed highway access. They've also done a swept path analysis that basically talks about the path that vehicles, so HGVs and other vehicles would take entering and exiting the site. So that it shows that manoeuvring and turning cycles of vehicles within the site curtilage and entering and egressing the site would also be safe. So this is just a summary, just to summarise then for the benefit of members. The principle of development would be acceptable for 2 open market and 5 self-built dwellings in light of the previous Class Q fallback position. Providing 5 self-built dwellings would meet half of the need on the register in Overy for self-builds. The indicative layout demonstrator scheme could be acceptable in terms of both visual and residential amenity, but bear in mind we don't know if penetrations or full elevation or designs yet, but this application isn't outlined, so those details can be ironed out at the reserve matter stage. But looking at the site layout, as indicated earlier, the site is sufficiently capable of accommodating the number of dwellings proposed without causing a constrained environment. There's no heritage, flood risk, ecology or phosphate issues with the application, and there's no highway issues that would basically, warrant a refusal of the application. So that was kind of the underlying justification for us as planning officers to recommend the approval of the current application. Bear in mind, these are reserved matters, but just to put the mind of the parish council at peace, so we can understand that we have paid heed to their concerns. In terms of the contaminated land concerns, we did carry a consultation with environmental health, who raised no objections subject to appropriate contaminated related conditions. Obviously, that is justified, and the members' concerns, well, the parish council concerns are also justified, given the former agricultural use of the site, there is potential for contamination there. So contaminated relating conditions would be appropriate, but that'd be more so at the reserve matter stage when we've got further details of the scheme. In terms of the reserve map was also confirmed the location, as I was saying earlier, of windows and roof heights, but at this stage is considered that subject to the provision of a construction environment management plan and lighting plan as recommended by environmental health, the proposed development could be accommodated without significant harm to residential amenity of both potential future occupiers and existing occupiers on the opposite side of the road. So, and again, these are just some other reserve matters, but just thought I'd touch upon them, or whether or not part of this application to show that a viable reserve matters application can be brought forward subsequently. So again, the indicative site layout, although it doesn't show the elevation or fenestration or designs of the proposed dwellings, it does show the orientation and positioning of the proposed dwellings within the plot and demonstrate that the size of a plot is capable of accommodating this number of dwellings. And most of the application site, and bear in mind we did notice the flood risk concerns as well, but most of the site, including the footprint of the 7 dwellings, would fall within flood zone 1 and not in an area of critical identified drainage problems. But obviously, you know, understanding the concerns of the parish council and that part of the corner of the site falls within flood zone 2, the applicant has submitted an FRA to address those concerns and provide further details about surface and foul water drainage arrangements. But again, this would be further considered as part of the reserve matters application if necessary. And any further drainage concerns, obviously, in terms of what have not already been addressed, will also be picked up by Part H of building regulations. And bear in mind, one last thing about the sustainability of the location. The wider site is adjacent, whilst outside the Overy designated 7 boundary, it's adjacent to it. So any future occupiers could access Overy by bicycle or other means of transport, and then use transport links within Overy to access surrounding and neighbouring villages, including the ones mentioned on this slide. Now, bear in mind, obviously, we don't live in a void. You know, villages do share amenities and facilities, and travel between villages is not uncommon. So obviously, you know, certain amenities and facilities between villages can be shared if need be. We don't think that would be a strong enough ground to resist an application on the basis that they would put pressure on existing services, because services with an increasing population have to be shared amongst villages as well. So that's something we have to balance that against. I think that's it from me for now, from us for now. So happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you. We've got one speaker, who is online, I believe, and that is Ollie Ansell, who's speaking on behalf of Southwest Strategic Developments in support of the application. Could you put him online, please?
That's correct. If Ollie could please turn his camera and microphone on at this stage.
Yeah, can you hear me now, sorry?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
1 second.
We'll get the planning team to please stop sharing their screen, and then we'll be able to see Oliver. Thanks. Right, switch your camera on. It's black, a black screen.
Okay, yeah, 2 seconds, sorry. How's that?
Something is happening. There we are. There we go.
We can see perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants in relation to this planning application.
Ollie,
One moment.
Before you start, just to let you know, you have 3 minutes, and when you come up to the 2-minute stage, we will indicate to let you know that you've got 1 minute left.
Okay, fab. Thank you.
Are you ready? Just let us know when you're ready to go, and we'll set the time.
Ready when you are, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants in relation to this application. The application proposes 7 dwellings in total, 2 open market to replace the Class Q conversion consent that's already been granted, and 5 self-built homes to meet the need that's been identified by the council. This is an outline application with the only means of access to be agreed at this stage. However, we've provided an illustrative master plan that demonstrates how the development would come forward and would fit in with the surrounding properties. It's anticipated that for the self-built element of the scheme in particular, individual reserve matters applications would come forward to seek approval for the design of each dwelling. Each design would therefore be considered at that stage, but would be designed to be sympathetic to the area and of the other properties on the site. We've worked with the case officer and consultees to ensure there are no technical objections to the proposal. And to summarise, the highway officer is now satisfied that the proposed access arrangement for the development would be safe and offers no objection. There's no objection from the lead local flood authority in terms of flood risk and our proposed drainage strategy. The ecology officer has provided no objections to the proposal subject to conditions. And there are no objections from the council's policy team, Natural England or the Environment Agency. As the officer has set out, there's identified an unmet need for new self-build plots within the district, and the council will therefore have to grant further consents for self-build developments to meet its legal duty to provide sufficient service plots. The contribution that this site would make towards meeting this requirement clearly represents a benefit of the proposal, with central government placing a great commitment to supporting the self-build and custom-built house building sector. When compared to volume house building, self-built homes are generally built to a higher standard of design, use more modern methods of constructions, and tend to be more innovative. Overall, we feel the proposals before you are well designed, lie in a sustainable location, and would help support local services and would meet an identified need for self-built plots. We therefore respectfully request the Planning Committee approve the application in line with the case officer's recommendation that planning permission be granted subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions, comments? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. A question for my colleague, the officer. The housing needs assessment on which a lot of this is based, it's quite an old document, and a new housing needs assessment was requested by the PC, the Parish Council. So we are saying that a need has been identified. Once again, this is one of my parishes, it's on my patch. We're saying that a need has been identified, but there's a suggestion that the document on which the need was assessed is now out of date. So can we confirm that or deny that, whichever way? And can I ask whether another housing needs assessment is on the cards for O3? Because I happen to agree that if a housing needs assessment were to be taken, it may well show that properties are required, but they won't be 4-bedroom jobs. They'll be for, 1 or 2 bedroom things for more people. I ramble, please. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. That's a very valid point, and thanks for asking that. And it's valid that you raised that point so we can clarify that. In terms of the housing needs assessment, obviously we're aware of the challenges we've had going from 4 district councils to unitary. So obviously at the moment we're even lacking a local plan at the moment, which would take more precedence when even over like open housing needs assessments. But obviously that challenge is down to becoming unitary. So there is a lot of policy documentation and policies about our date, but as the saying goes, you have to work with the tools we have at the moment. Obviously, the NPPF, we have to look at the most relevant policies and let material considerations indicate otherwise. That is a valid point. It would be ideal to have the housing needs assessment, and our unitary website does say that O3 is due for a new assessment. There's no specific timescales given in relation to that yet. But obviously we can only work with the policies we have, and the most relevant ones. So in this situation, the NPPF talks about the value, the contribution that small and medium-sized sites can make. And obviously for us to derogate from that, unless we've got a specific policy that would show that holds less weight, when we would have to go by the most relevant policies and applicable ones at the time. And obviously looking at the South Build Register compared to the NPPF policies, that was the most strongest ground we feel we could support the application, and we couldn't find anything on that would contradict what those figures were approved in, basically contradict those policies. So for us to refuse that, we didn't feel that without specific housing needs assessment and specific figures, we don't feel we could justify refusal or appeal if that happened, because without specific housing needs assessment to rely upon, that would be very difficult for us to justify in planning terms.
Thank you. Can I follow up?
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for that. To switch over to the legal side now, if, let's say for the sake of argument, this application were to go through today as an outline, and in the interim, a new housing needs assessment were to take place before this came to reserved matters, would that change or could that change anything? If if the balance of the housing needs assessment were to state that you'd need a certain type of property or less or fewer or more properties. Do you understand the question?
Yeah. So it is outlined, it's saying, and yeah, so would housing needs, say it came, back with a different formation of houses requirement. So you're, deciding on the principle here. Obviously we do have that in the description there, the 5 self-build. I suppose it's what comes forward at the time. The planners might be able to help in indicating.
Can I interject there? Yes, the outline planning permission, sorry, let me come closer. The outline planning permission stage, which is what we have before us today, is the planning permission for the site. The reserved matters, details, are just matters for consideration in due course. This is the determination of this application, and this is the planning permission that would stand. So we wouldn't be able to go back and sort of revisit that if there were an update in any material considerations, because it would already have planning permission if it was successful today.
I see, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer and then Councillor Bruce.
I'm hoping to get some clarification because I might have got myself completely confused on this, but my understanding was this is an outline application. The justification of it is self-build policy. It isn't a housing needs assessment to say that we need affordable housing. It is that there is need for self-build in this area, and therefore, because it's adjacent to the boundary, that's the policy that we're triggering in this particular case. So I think I'm seeing nods. So is that? Yeah.
So just to interject on that, so I know the members probably struggle to follow this because I've been through a fair amount of variation to the agenda, so apologies about that. There are 5, just to clarify, as Ali had said, there's 5 self-build and 2 open market. But the reason we've got the 2 open market, we have to take a pragmatic approach to the fallback of the class Q. So we're using the policy D9, which is self-build, is being used to support the 5 self-build. The 2 class Qs, the fallback position of a class Q is being used to support the additional 2 open market dwellings.
I think it's just because there was discussion about, in effect, the housing needs assessment, which is more about affordable housing as a trigger rather than self-build, which in this case is.
Yeah, there's no affordable housing in this specific scheme, so that wouldn't apply.
Okay, that's fine. So just again, to get our heads around this, this is an outline, so we're saying 7 dwellings, 2 of which they've got this fallback on class Q.
Open market too, yeah.
Which is a horrible system, but that's what the inspectors do, so we've got to go with that. I can't see there's an issue with that. The applicant had put his indicative plan showing 4-bedroom properties. My understanding that's not part of this. We're just simply saying the number of properties, and then the justification of the size and everything else will come in reserve matters.
So just in that, usually, I mean, in outline applications that I've done in the past, we normally add a condition, so we can't say, oh, you got 5 dwellings, but when somebody comes back with a 4-story dwelling sort of thing, you can't do that. We normally add a condition saying the outline application is for X amount of units. In this case, it would be for 5 4-bedroom dwellings only. So the reason we put that thing on is because we don't want to just establish the principle of residential development. We want to establish the quantity of residential development that's been approved at the site. So there are conditions normally add on outline application to address that exact kind of situation. That would include, obviously, we don't know elevation or fenestration designs, but we know a number of bedrooms and we know roughly a number of stories.
Okay, that might cause me a bit more of a problem.
Sorry, can I interject there?
Okay.
Well, yeah, at this stage and this proposal, the description nor the conditions include number of bedrooms. It is just the number of dwellings. They could come in with 1-bedroom dwellings. They could come in with 8-bedroom dwellings in due course. But that's all we're tied to at this stage.
Excellent. Okay, that's reassuring, Chair, because it may well be when these self-build people come forward, they don't need 4-bed houses. They might only need 2 and 3-bed houses. So I wouldn't want to see us sticking up a whole load of big houses because we've done that. So again, on that, understand the class Q now, understand the self-builds, happy to go with those. The only final question is more a policy question than anything else. The report refers to this being brownfield land, and it was obviously a farmyard. Are we now saying that any redundant farmyard is now classified as brownfield land?
I mean, we're not saying that brownfield land is normally defined in the policy as previously developed land, but in this situation, we're not specifically putting a definition of brownfield land as any farmyard, but just looking at the circumstances of this case, we can see that the land has been previously developed. But I think the emphasis is I mean, I put the point across to try and simplify it, but the emphasis is on the fact that the land has been previously developed. So it might not just be a farmyard, just looking at this from more abstract terms, any previously developed land, whether it's a farmyard or not, would constitute the definition of brownfield land. But obviously, we just use that as an example to try and further explain, the nature of the previous use of a site. Now, it's obviously in relation to the contamination concerns as well. That's why I touched up on that specifically.
Thank you. I'm reassured.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Gary, did you wish to come in at all?
No, thank you, Chair. Louise covered the bit I was going to come in on.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce and then Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted confirmation of whether the self-build register is up to date, seeing as the housing needs assessment is so old. Is that we're talking about 10 people registered in Oswey for self-build? Seems quite a lot, but they're still interested.
Yeah, just to answer that, obviously, that's why we did consult with the planning policy team. We don't check this ourselves. We always consult the planning policy team because they have the most up-to-date data. So when they've given us figures, it'll be from the most up-to-date data because that's what their job is pretty much. So that's why we asked them specifically in the consultation response to provide the most up-to-date data in that regard, and that's what they've advised. And the self-build register is usually updated on the website. That people have to register on the website for the self-build, so that would be up to date, unlike the housing needs assessment, which is the policy document that has to be created and drafted. If that makes sense.
I have, sorry, me again. The latest, 8th base period, self-build register is January 2024. Let me just scroll down to find. Overy. We have individual applications, not just in Overy, sorry, this is for the entire district. Let's just have a look now. Sorry, I would have to defer to policy. I think, yeah, it's quite complicated. Sorry, the table's in the document, but it is available on our website.
Just following in on that, I think in terms of the up-to-date view as to the need for self-build, so custom build in the area, it's regularly updated, so it's not out of date. But I think what I'd advise the committee to fall back on is the reassurance that the proposals for 5 are custom self-build, not open market. And I think whereas that description is in the description of development, as Safford has said at the end of his presentation, I think we're kind of recommending that there should be, if the committee were minded to grant permission, we should add a condition, belt and braces approach to say, it's two open market, but the additional 5 are custom build. So that means that the applicant couldn't come forward and say, oh, there's not that demand for custom build anymore. So therefore they're being built as open market. The condition would actually prevent that from happening. Should they wish to make that case, then that's a new application. But I think we would recommend a belt and braces approach by adding a condition securing the 5 as custom build if the committee are minded to approve.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Bit familiar with this area. I'm involved in affordable housing across the road, right across the road from there. And I bypass this place twice a week with my daughter, my sister and brother-in-law. They own their beer cider farm. They're in beer, just about a mile and a half down the road. Clearly, this is a site that wants something doing. It's been redundant for a long time, these feeding, and it wants something doing to it. I am a bit confused, if I'm honest. I think everybody else is as well. I'm not too clear on it. And we as a planning committee don't want to do something that's wrong here today and put our hands up for something that's wrong. We want to do something that's going to be right for Overy and all the people that live in Overy. That's the important one we got to get right. And I would rely on the professionalism of our officers to make sure that is right, because it's clearly want something doing with it. lot of other places within Somerset, redundant farm buildings falling down because of the complexity of planning regulations and rules. They're standing there, just falling in disrepair when people want houses and it clearly isn't right. So we've got to get this one right possibly. So I'm hoping you're gonna come for your professionalism and really make it right for everyone. The people in Overy, we don't want red pages, the planning committee, I certainly don't. And I'm sure everybody else is the same. So, those maps, when you see the map, you can put the map up again, of the way the development's set out. And you've gone as far as, you've got the biodiversity as well, included as well, which is a part and parcel of all these things as well. It looked good. We gotta be concrete sure they were gonna be doing the right thing, and like everybody would agree with me.
Thanks, councillor Bradford. Can I ask, Gavin to respond?
Yes, Chair. So I think the thing that you're deciding today is should 7 dwellings be built on the site. The actual design and layout would come forward through a further application for reserve matters. Now, in terms of, it's obviously it's a judgment for you as individual members and a committee, but I'd say the reassurance we give you is that the site already has consent for 2 open market dwellings through Class Q, so that's banked by the developer, and so that justifies 2 of those units being open market. The justification for the other 5 is that they're self or custom build units, and I think that there is policy support for that. There is a up-to-date assessment of that kind of need in the area. And the reassurance you could have is by attaching that further condition to say that plots, 1 to 5 shall only be self-stroke custom built, and that secures that you're only granting permission for that type of housing and not open market by the back door.
Right, Madam Chairman, so I'm going to be bold enough to do that. I'm going to move the recommendation.
With the additional condition
Yeah, with the condition.
regarding plots 1 to 5 being self-custom build, given that the 2 remaining plots have the Class 2 permission already. Okay, are you happy with that?
Very happy. I don't want a red face.
So that's a proposal. I've got councillor Hendry. Did anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hendry.
We're happy to go second if somebody else wants to speak.
I don't think anybody does. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I was just going to say, at this stage, as we all can see and read and know, it's only outline. That really is the bottom line. What we've got on the table here is just saying, is it outline? Is it okay? Is it not? The answer to that is yes. So therefore, I'm quite happy to second Councillor Bradford. Thank you.
With the additional condition?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. As stated, all those in favour, please show.
Everyone.
No.
Matt isn't doing anything.
So just can't make sure we've got the number. 10. So that's 10 in favour. Any against? I think that's 1 against. And so that's everybody, isn't it? No abstentions. Okay, so that is carried. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of the applications. Thank you all. We just have the appeals reports.
Chair, sorry for the paste. I think you said 10 and 1.
I did say 2.
There's 12 of us in the room, there should be 10 and.
Should be 11.
Oh, sorry. Have you just clarified the numbers?
Yeah.
You want to vote again?
You can vote again.
So, yeah, sorry. All those in
Sorry, my
favour,
apologies.
all those in favour, please show.
11.
11 for.
And 1 again. And
One against. Okay, and that is everybody. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, if you'd like to take us through the final item on the agenda, which is the appeal report, please.
I will, Chair, and I won't take up the remaining time between now and 5 o'clock unless members have questions. There were 2 appeals determined since the last committee meeting. They're set out in the papers on page 137, or the bare bones anyway. I've looked at both decisions. Both appeals were dismissed, so they went with the council's decision. I think they were both delegated decisions. The first one was quite a straightforward application where the applicant sought permission for a drop curb and access onto a classified road. It was a plot, big front garden plot where it's not possible to actually turn a vehicle round, and so a vehicle would either have to enter the property in reverse gear or leave in reverse gear. It was refused on highway safety grounds. The inspector considered the local highway conditions. It's one of the main roads into Burnham-on-Sea, and agreed that a vehicle either reversing on or reversing off would either disrupt traffic or be dangerous. And whilst there were accesses nearby that were, had been either granted permission or immune from enforcement action, they were largely wider plots where a vehicle could turn around. So with the proposal before them, the inspector felt that the proposal was unacceptable and therefore dismissed the appeal. The second one was for the erection of one dwelling in what I describe as a backland plot at the rear of two dwellings. Two existing dwellings. Permission been refused. Permission can be granted in those circumstances sometime, but it's a matter of judgment on the particular proposals. This case, the council had refused permission, and the inspector largely agreed with the council's position, felt that the development would be in a rather cramped and overdeveloped appearance, contrary to the character and appearance of the local area. The plot didn't have much of an actual public frontage, so the inspector had a problem with that. The one issue that the inspector disagreed with the council was that the inspector felt that aside from all the other issues, that future occupiers would have adequate living conditions in terms of open space. The officers have felt that there was insufficient outdoor space for the property. The inspector felt that there would be, but however, the inspector went back to the previous view that actually it'd be a rather cramped form of development. So dismissed the appeal. And Louise has reminded me through breaking news. Of course, we referred to earlier, didn't we, the Paul appeal. So it'll be in the papers next time around. We'll talk about in a bit more detail. That's what the note actually says. So we're like-minded there. So you'll be aware that appeal was allowed to the north of Paul for the 40 dwellings and a convenience store. So next time around we'll have a proper look at that decision, because it came out yesterday. So we can report on that in a bit more detail, and obviously can talk around that with looking at the deferred application as well. Excellent. So that's all for me this time around on appeals, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions on the appeals report? No, there are no questions. So that brings the meeting to an end. I thank all members for attending and taking part. Thank you.